Not only are we going to be unboxing and doing a little bit of a first impressions of the new ported CZ P10C, but we're also going to be going over 8 or 9 things that are actually different on the new CZ P10C versus the OG. I will have a complete list for everything that we're talking about in today's video. The first link in the description, it'll also be pinned in the comments. And if you guys are watching this on your television, right there. First, let's unbox it, and then we'll get into the things that are different on the new P10C versus the old one. First thing right off the bat, I haven't picked up a new polymer CZ since probably the year 2018. So the first thing I notice is the cases are different and are easier to open now. In the box, obviously, we got the pistol. We have 2 magazines. We have 2 different sized back straps. I believe the small one is on the gun right now, and then you get a medium and a large. You obviously get your lock. And something that you don't typically see in a box is magazine extensions. And they actually included them for both magazines. I don't believe I got that when I picked up the original P10C. You also get a cleaning rod that collapses and goes into the case. And this is actually something kind of nice that I've never seen another company include. It is a snap cap so that you can dry fire your gun safely, especially if you have one of their hammer fired guns. And these little green pieces right here are little inserts that go inside of there so you can swap them out and do your dry fire. You obviously get your instruction manual and all your warranty work and all that other stuff. Let's put this away for a second. All right, so we're gonna go up close with the new P10C first, then we'll go up close and compare it to the older version. Now this is the OG version from the year 2018. And as I mentioned earlier, there's like 8 or 9 differences between the original and the new one. So number one, it honestly doesn't look much different at first glance from the original version. The frame looks identical. The magazines almost look identical. We'll talk more about those in a second. The trigger, it looks identical. And not only that, it feels identical. Everything on here almost seems identical. And then obviously we have the chunk port that's at the front. And then you can see that the port right here on the barrel and in the slide. And you'll notice a couple of things that are different right off the bat. Number one, the slide is now serrated on the top. That's the first difference. The second difference is look at these front sights. Now on the original version and pretty much all of CZ's in the past, they always had this front dovetail for the sight to slide in from the front. Now we have more of a traditional dovetail so that you can slide the sight in normally. And this seems to be a trend that CZ is on lately because they've done that on all of their pistols. But as you can see on the Shadow 2 Carry and on the new P09 Nocturne, they've done the same thing, adding a standard dovetail for the front sights. Aside from the dovetails being different, we now have different front sights. The old one had tritium night sights on it, both front and rear. And on the new one, they're simply painted green. There's no tritium in them at all. That's not a big deal. Some people might hate that, some people might like that. Something I did notice was that my front sight from the factory is off center. I'm gonna have to fix that with my sight pusher. Aside from having a port and the sights being different, if you look at this front barrel right here, on this side, we have the ported version. On this side, we have the non-ported version. If it's not apparently obvious to you, the new barrel is a lot larger in diameter than the old barrel. I think it's more like a bull barrel, but the outer diameter of the old barrel is about 14.3 millimeters, whereas the new barrel is about 15.95 or 16 millimeters. Quite a bit different. And that kind of had me wondering, can the barrels be swapped around? So on the right, we have the ported slide. On the left, we have the old slide. The recoil springs, they feel to be the same weight, despite this one being ported. And we'll pull these barrels out right now. And then look, you can actually really see the difference when they're out of the gun. See how much thicker the new barrel is, more like a bull barrel. And this one's more like your standard barrel. Well, the reason that made me curious is I learned that you can't simply take this and put it into the old slide because it simply won't fit. And I learned if you take the old barrel and put it into the new slide, it's not gonna fit either. I mean, it'll probably function and stuff, but like, it's not gonna be accurate. Another thing you will notice that is different here is the chambering of the barrel. So I at first thought that this little square notch here was like a loaded chamber indicator where you could look in and see, but it's not. I don't know why that notch is there, but it's not there on the old one. If someone could let me know down in the comments, I have no idea what that notch is for, but that is something I noted to be different. Looking at the bottoms of the slides, there's not much else that's different about them. Looking back here at the rear, this side is the new one, this side's the old one. Firing pin mechanism looks exactly the same going up. All of this looks exactly the same. The only real difference is up here in the front where you can see that the opening for the barrel is a lot larger. Another thing you'll notice that is different on these slides is the serrations. It looks like we now have less serrations on the newer slide. On the older slide, you had a lot more serrations, and the serrations on the old model also seem to be quite a bit larger. Moving to the front here, we also have less serrations on the new version. And something else that's different is you notice this line that runs right here. You can see the difference in the light. The old serrations seem to just go right up to that line and then kind of stop, whereas the new serrations seem to cross over that line. And something I noticed about that was when you're doing press checks, in addition to having these extra top serrations, you can actually feel your thumb grabbing it right here a lot better than you could on the old slide. Another interesting difference in these slides is just going to be the chamfering. And I'm specifically referring to this angled chamfer along this corner on each side. If you look on the old version, it's kind of rounded right here. And then on the new version, it's more angular. Additionally, if you look at the slides from the front, that angular look goes all the way to the end of the slide, whereas on this one, it was more rounded profile. This one's more angular. Now, this next thing that is different isn't specific to the new ported CZ P10C. This is actually something that got updated about 4 years ago, I believe, when CZ decided to do a refresh. And that is, on this side, we have the original magazine, and on this side, we have the new magazines. You'll notice that this one has 2 notches on each side, and this one only has 1 notch on each side. The good and the bad of this is, on the original P10C, it was fully ambidextrous, meaning the magazine release could be released from either side. It didn't really matter. You were going to be able to release it. The downside to this was there were many people, including myself, who would sometimes be at the range and bump one side or the other, and it would drop out while you're shooting it. And so apparently about 3 or 4 years ago, CZ decided to get rid of the ambidextrous mag release and go for a completely different system so that these mags will work. Here's where the cons really kind of come into place. Number one, you no longer have an ambidextrous mag release. That's kind of a bummer for some people, and for other people it's not. However, I do believe these new mag releases, they are reversible, so if you're left-handed, you're still gonna be okay. But here's the biggest bummer. Let's say you were the person that's like me, who always had the OG CZ P10C, and then you're like, you know what, I'm gonna get one of the new ported versions. Well, the downside is, none of your old magazines are gonna work. They simply won't work. However, the new magazines will work on the old P10C. I thought that was kind of crazy. And I'll show you why they don't work. Let me zoom you in. Okay, so this is the old CZ P10. And whenever you hit this magazine release, that little piece moves and it allows it to go left or right when dropping out the mags. Because I was curious if you'd be able to put the original ambidextrous mag release in here, and unfortunately you can't. The actual inside of this frame here is completely different than it used to be. There's no way to put the ambidextrous mag release into this frame because the frame just simply isn't cut right for it. Now, some people on Reddit have said if you're pretty decent with a Dremel, you'll be able to simply cut out a slot right here on the old mag and make it work with the new mag, because that is the only thing that's different, at least in regards to the magazines. Now, this one is the optics ready slide, and there is absolutely nothing different about this optics ready footprint versus the original optics ready footprint. And that kind of bothered me because if you notice when we were unboxing it, I was actually expecting CZ to probably do something a little bit different with this, because you've always had to buy an optic plate after the fact. Now, I've already ordered a couple. I'll have links over at the parts list if you want to check them out. But that kind of bothers me because if you look at the CZ P09 Nocturne, now I literally just picked this one up as well, have not fired it, and I got to make a video on it as well. But if you notice, their optic plate is made for the 507K or the Shield Sights RMS, and you can get a direct mount on here. And I don't understand why they didn't do that on the P10C, which is gonna bring me to my next point. Things that disappoint me about this, or things that I wish they would have done on this. Number one, we just talked about it, is the optics plate. I wish they would have done something similar to what they did with the P09. Now, some people may not like that because the downside to having the K footprint is you are limited on which optics you can use, which kind of sucks. I mean, you're limited to the K footprint. There might be some adapter plates to change it, but you can't really go larger. I wish if they didn't do that, they'd at least include an RMR footprint plate, since that's the most common footprint that is used. Or do something similar to Walther, where they give you a voucher, and then all you do is go to their website and put in your serial number, and they will mail you out one free plate. That would be something that would be kind of cool, but that's kind of a bummer. Second thing we mentioned earlier, I'm kind of bummed about the magazine thing. At least backwards compatibility and stuff like that kind of bums me out, but apparently that was something that was updated a long time ago. I just didn't know about it. And then thirdly, my biggest disappointment with this is the frame texturing. Now, don't get me wrong, the P10C has always had really good texturing where it had texturing. The problem is it didn't have any texturing up in here, where our support hands tend to ride to help mitigate recoil. I was hoping they would have done something similar to the P09 yet again. This is my original CZ P07 Tactical. If you'll notice, there's a lot of baldness on this frame, and I noticed when I was at the range shooting it that it was really hard to hang on to it because my hand would slide right here. But on the newer P09, now this isn't going to be an in-depth review about this gun, but I'm just showing you, you see how they put all kinds of extra texture on here, not only on the sides, but also on the front straps, also up here where your thumb rides, all that stuff. I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't do that on the P10C, because here's the deal. When I first heard about this ported P10C coming out, I assumed, and this was a false assumption on my part, that CZ was having a difficult time selling their current models. So my thoughts were, I assumed that they went in here and just ported out one of their OEM guns and then sold it like that. When in fact they didn't. They went ahead and they overhauled it with all those changes that I mentioned earlier. And it wouldn't be very difficult to throw this on their laser etching machine like they did with this one and simply etch out some texturing up on these sides right here. That would have been absolutely amazing. That's my biggest disappointment. However, this gun has one huge saving grace compared to pretty much all other factory ported handguns. That's going to be the price. Okay, so let's talk about the price of this. I mentioned earlier in this video, a lot of times when companies come out with ported versions of their pistols, they throw on a couple $100 extra bucks. However, I am pleased to say that CZ actually didn't do that. The original CZ P10C, when I picked it up in 2018, was around $500 or so. And in recent years, they've been going down in price dramatically. Like the non-optics ready versions I've been seeing for about $350, and then the optics ready versions, I've been seeing them in the low $4s. On the new ported version, as I mentioned about the stuff over at the list, where I've seen this for about $478. I mean, that's really a great price, especially when it's ported. Now, this is why this is important. The new M&P carry comp, those are around $750, whereas the non-ported version is like $500. The Springfield Echelon comp is about $700. The X macros, those are about $800 to $850. Panic MC9 Prime is about $600, but I've heard a lot of horror stories about that. But I will say this, of all those guns that we just listed that come from the factory ported, this one is definitely the most affordable. So now here's the question we need to answer. Knowing what I know now, would I buy this or not? I'm gonna put it like this. If I already owned a P10C, maybe not. And it depends on how much I paid for this, right? So if you bought a regular CZ P10C and then say it was about $400 and you've had it for a few years, it's been reliable for you, and you're like, man, I just don't really want to go buy another gun just to have ports, then there are a few companies out there that will actually port your original CZ P10C for you for about a couple $100. It's not bad. I'll have info about them over at the list if you want to check them out. However, if this is like one of your only carry guns and you don't want to send your slide off to get it ported, I totally understand. You don't want to be without your gun, then yes, I would totally buy this knowing what I know now. So here in the very near future, we're gonna do a whole series with this gun, and we are gonna modify the crap out of this after we get the initial impressions on how it shoots. Because when it comes to ports on guns, there are some things you have to look out for, especially when it comes to accuracy problems and feet per second problems and stuff like that. I just got the new Garmin chronograph, so we'll be able to test FPS, all that stuff. We'll also be able to take a look at point of aim, point of impact shifts, and things like that. So make sure you're subscribed, and that way you can watch the entire series. Then we're gonna do some stuff with the frame stippling, the trigger, all kinds of crazy stuff. I like it. I think it's awesome. I'm a little bit disappointed that they didn't texture the frame, but at the end of the day, this is one of the most affordable ported factory pistols that money can buy. And so because of that, I would buy it knowing what I know now. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. But until next time, guys, I love you, and you guys stay sexy.